at this moment right now, Christian Pulisic, let it be known throughout the world, is world class. Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show, we'll be talking, what's a world-class player? The Menendez brothers. Evidently, Pep's ruining the world of soccer, and I'm ruining American soccer. Mbappe's out, MLS expansion, podcasting at 2 times speed, home team allegiance, personal soccer trainers, and so much more. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Wednesday, September 25th in the year 2024?
I'm doing well. That was quite the intro. We have a blockbuster show today.
Yeah, we got a lot of different stuff. And actually, when I was thinking about the show yesterday and today, I was worried that we didn't have enough to fill, but we got plenty. And so we're trying to make the shows a little bit more compact when it comes to timing, and obviously keep it under an hour. That's what the data says that we should do, and I think we're getting better at it.
Sean had a meeting with the eggheads, namely Alyssa, who is the big numbers cruncher around here, and he told me yesterday that the conversation went very well. They're happy with our numbers, so everything's going smoothly.
Well, good. Let's hope that goes on. Hey, I was talking to Kat behind the scenes here, and we were talking about, because we're always talking about podcasts or shows that we're watching. When you listen to podcasts, I listen to everything on 2 times speed. Do you listen to it on regular speed, or do you speed it up?
Regular speed.
Really?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I can't listen to anything unless it's sped up. Now, there's certainly an argument to me that you don't get the full gist of what's being said, but I don't have time, and I've become so accustomed to hearing, especially, podcasts that I listen to on a continual basis, so accustomed to hearing the main voices at 2 times speed. Sometimes I will meet these people in person, and it freaks you out. If all you've heard them for years and years and years is 2 times speed when you actually hear it. I also listen to our podcast on 2 times speed, and sometimes I say, wow, I was really smooth in the way that I delivered that line. And then I'll go back and listen to it normally on normal speed, and I don't sound as smooth or as intelligent. I'm not intelligent on any speed, but this is a phenomenon. I'm sure there are people out there nodding their heads that they want to get more in less time that go up to 2. My wife cannot understand why I listen to it on 2 times. She will have none of it, because sometimes she'll get in the car and I have the thing going at 2 times speed. She doesn't do any of that. Have you watched anything, speaking of watching or listening to things?
I haven't actually started this, but I do want to mention it. There's a TV show, Homicide, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. It aired on NBC in the 90s.
Yeah, it was like a Law and Order type of thing each week, and
it was considered ahead of its time. A lot of television critics view it as a precursor to the prestige era that followed with The Sopranos, The Wire, etc. It's now available on Peacock. I've never watched it. I am planning to binge it at some point. It was based on a book written by David Simon, who then contributed to the show and then went on, of course, to become the creator of The Wire.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I like that kind of retro look. All I have for you, and I teased it last show, I finished up the new Menendez brothers story. Now, it's not a doc. It's a docudrama, if you will, and it's part of the Monsters series that is over there on Netflix. I think they did one with Dahmer before, and now this is the Menendez one. It's 10 episodes. I remember it from back in the day, and it was sensational. It was back in the 90s and everything that was going on. I think they did a really, really good job for a couple of reasons. Number one, the story is incredible, and number two, it's a kind of period piece now, because it's full-blown 90s in the way that they dressed everything, the way they literally dressed, all the different 90s isms that were around there, going through the OJ chase and all that kind of stuff. I think they did a really good job. As far as the actual story and these 2 kids that were convicted, of brutally murdering their mother and father. There's a point, and I'm not giving anything away, so if you don't know the story, I know there's some people that are going to watch it and don't know the story, but there is a point in the docudrama here where a lady gets up and she is on the jury and she gives this impassioned and angry speech to the other jurors as to how can you possibly believe these two psychopaths. And then she promptly has a heart attack, and they have to replace her on the jury. My point is that she encapsulated everything that I feel about these two, and then I think a lot of people feel in terms of how they attempted to manipulate the public and the jury, and ultimately it didn't work. But it's a crazy and fascinating, ultimately incredibly brutal and horrible story. But it's told really well in terms of this drama. So I really liked it.
I will
check
it out.
2 thumbs up. You'll check it out. All right, should we light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Where shall we start?
We're going to look ahead to some games this upcoming weekend. We'll begin in Italy on Friday. AC Milan will host Lecce. Christian Pulisic looking to continue his impressive start to the campaign. 5 straight games with a goal contribution. Sean Sullivan and Kyla Morris, who are plugged into such things, tell me that on social media there's a raging debate right now as to whether Christian Pulisic is world class. Now, world class is one of those nebulous terms. You ask 10 people what it means, you get 10 different answers. But I do think putting Pulisic into some sort of global context right now is interesting. When we talk about U.S. players, we tend to only talk about them in a U.S. context. Best American player right now, best American player ever. But if you expand it out, with what Pulisic's doing. You said on our last pod you think he's one of the best players in Serie A right now. I gave the stat last week that no Serie A player has more goal contributions than him since the start of last season. So where does he belong in this discussion of top blank players in the world, top players in the world at his position? What do you think?
So again, to your point, defining what world class is, I think, is important, and it is subjective. Ultimately, with the word world in it, there has to be some, I think, in my definition, there has to be some kind of worldwide recognition that supersedes the actual nationality of the player and all of those stories. It's not just playing at the international level, because that could apply to any type of player. But I think when I tried to think of it, and I was driving in this morning trying to think of what my definition, and maybe over the years it's changed, and maybe for you out there that are watching or listening, you have your own definition. But I look at it as this is a player that like I said, has transcended his or her nationality and is coveted by the best teams in the world and is coveted by teams throughout the world and certainly at the best leagues. I think in this moment, and this is obviously relative to the moment, which is what we were talking about earlier this week, there is an argument to be made that he is certainly at the top of his game. We have seen in the past, although it was during COVID, where he had that moment where we thought that trajectory was going to happen, and it took a little detour there. So I think that he is playing better right now than any time in the past. Maybe it's a logical type of progression in terms of growth, his physical and mental growth that happens to any type of player. But I think that there are teams all over the world that in this particular moment, if you could say, would you like to have Christian Pulisic? The vast, vast majority would say yes. And I think that qualifies him being world class. I think that when you ask the best players around, when I was down in Monterrey this weekend with all of these incredible players, if I had asked them to talk about in the current moment an American player, I think almost all of them would point to Christian Pulisic and what he is doing. But I don't know. I guess what's your definition first off of world class?
I guess good enough to play on any team in the world and be a contributing player for. Is that fair?
But yeah, do you have any doubt that, I mean, I know it's not going to happen, but if Christian Pulisic stepped on the field for Real Madrid,
I don't think he would look out of place.
Exactly. So I think that says it all.
He had 15 goals and 11 assists last season, his most productive campaign in Europe. He seemingly is going to go to another level this season, but I do need to see this that he's doing right now for a little bit longer so we can establish that this is the new normal. It's not just a good stretch. If he can do that, then yeah, I mean, he enters the discussion as one of the best players at his position in all of Europe because he has been phenomenal. For those of you watching, the goal he scored against Inter this past weekend, scored against Liverpool the game before that. So yeah, I have no qualms saying it. Now, the issue you run into is there's nothing that the English like more than to proclaim that a player couldn't cut it in the Premier League, had to go to an inferior league to succeed, and has found his level. Now, I find to just summarize Christian Pulisic's time at Chelsea as, he couldn't play in the Premier League, I find that ridiculous. It's a lot more complicated, a lot more nuanced than that. You have to understand the context at Chelsea. Nevertheless, that's the argument you're going to get. Oh, sure, he's doing it in Serie A, but he couldn't do it in the Premier League.
Again, it goes back to, if Christian Pulisic were to be dropped into with Pep at Manchester City, he would have no problem. He would figure it out. So I am happy that Christian Pulisic's healthy. I'm happy that he's playing well. Who would you give in this discussion? Give me a comp, and relative to him playing for the U.S. men's national team, because I know a lot of people, when we think of Christian Pulisic and we see him playing this well, immediately our thoughts turn to, okay, can we see this type of performance on a continual basis in a very different circumstance playing for the U.S., and is he able to do that? And it's not as easy as that, because it is a very type of different circumstance.
It's not, but keep in mind, he scored a beautiful free kick goal against Brazil this past summer, played very well in that game, scored a great goal against Germany late last year in that friendly in Hartford. So even with the U.S., he's starting to do it against some pretty good competition, albeit friendlies. But no, I think you could put him on the field against anybody right now, and he would like his chances of being able to produce.
Okay, so I think we agree that at this moment right now, Christian Pulisic, let it be known throughout the world, is world class.
Well, we don't all agree. Sean Sullivan is bullish that he isn't yet, because Sean's definition is you have to do it in the Champions League or in a World Cup and that type of setting. Now, keep in mind, Pulisic years ago did help Chelsea win the Champions League. Very good in the semis against Real Madrid. And he did just score against Liverpool in a Champions League game. So we might need Sean to come out here and explain his argument a little bit better. But he did tell me yesterday on our Zoom call, and then right before we started taping, that he comes down on no, Pulisic is not world class.
Wow. Well, I'd like to see his list of who is world class and how big and deep that list actually is. Remember, it's power rankings, if you will.
Every year, the Guardian comes out with a list of the top 100 players in the world. Last year, there was no American on the list. They used that as a jumping off point for this whole column about how the U.S.'s golden generation wasn't living up to its promise, and why hasn't the U.S. produced yet a world-class star. I'll be curious to see where Pulisic places this year. If he's not in that top 100, then that would be absurd. But how high would they be willing to put an American? Because as I just said, England, there's a real sort of anti-American bias there with how they view the game. So we'll be able to keep an eye on that. You know what I was thinking about when we were thinking about this topic today? One of the most controversial moments in the history of this podcast, it happened way back in 2019. This is pre-Sean Sullivan. This is like Alex Dowd era. Carlos Vela was finishing up that MVP season with LAFC, 34 goals, 15 assists. And you said on this pod that he was one of the top 20 to 25 players in the world, and that blew everybody's mind. All the Euro snobs, how can you say that? How can an MLS player be ranked that high? And so when I teed you up today, I was hoping you would actually give out a number if Pulisic is among the blank top players in the world, just so we can get a VOD out, get everybody worked up.
No, if you look at Christian Pulisic in this moment, what are we looking at? Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. I don't think you can argue that Christian Pulisic isn't one of the top 25 players playing the game right now in the world. And again, who knows? Maybe next week or then a few weeks from now, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, that's why I say I want to see him maintain this for a little bit longer, because when you do it for an extended period of time, then it's not good form. Then that's the new normal. That's who you are. So he seemingly has taken his game to another level this season, but can he keep it going for the whole campaign and finish with like 25 goals and 13 assists, something like that? Then there's no discussion.
Well, that's the mark of quality. When I'm doing my power rankings, for example, the yo-yo types of teams, those aren't the really good teams. It's the ones that are there from the beginning, and maybe they move a little bit here and there, but they're always kind of around. Spain, for example, was that type of team this summer in terms of what we were doing. All right. Is Weston McKennie a world-class player?
I would say no.
Okay. All right. I think we can agree that he has the potential to be, but at this point, no.
And the reason you bring him up is because our next game, Juve are away to Genoa. McKennie hoping to make his third straight start, and we'll see if Timmy Weah can work his way back into that starting lineup.
And for both, whether it's McKennie, if he is on the field, and certainly Christian Pulisic right now, these are not just winnable games, but they're also games playing, let's see, Genoa's down at 16th and Lecce's down at 17th. So these are games that they should win. They should have plenty of the ball, and they should be able to show who they are. From a McKennie perspective, let's just hope that this trend continues where he's on the field.
You know, Sean Sullivan fancies himself now the Serie A expert because he took a trip to Italy on his honeymoon. Yesterday on the Zoom call, he went off on this whole spiel about Genoa Stadium, how they're getting a new stadium, and he likes this and stadium. Kylie and I were both like, what is this guy rambling about right now? But nevertheless, Sean has a lot of thoughts on Genoa's stadium situation. We move to the championship, where Leeds will host Coventry. Brenden Aaronson continuing to play well for Leeds. He had an assist last time out against Cardiff. Haji Wright hasn't scored in over a month, but keep in mind he doesn't play center forward for Coventry. He usually plays out wide. The two of them go head-to-head this upcoming weekend.
Do you like Haji Wright more as a central nine-ish type of player, or do you like him out wide?
I like him better as a center forward.
You do? Okay. In that stable of players going forward. Well, I mean, so he has to kind of adjust when he gets to the national team. All right. I mean, we've talked about Brenden Aaronson and him finding a place where he's comfortable, and week after week, we seem to talk about him in doing stuff, whether it's assist or goal or just playing. So I'm happy about that. Again, I don't know if that is his ceiling. That's great, because I think he is maxed out as to what he is. It just remains to be seen if that's enough. Again, we talk a lot about the context relative to the national team. Is that enough for him to really be impactful when it comes to the U.S. men's national team? And I'm not so sure.
Josh Sargent hasn't scored in 3 straight games. He'll look to get back on track. Norwich are away to Derby County.
Okay. Well, the Redhead needs to get back in scoring, especially as we mentioned last pod with the announcement of the U.S. playing a game in St. Louis, his hometown. He will want to be healthy. He will obviously want to be scoring, and he will want to get on the field in that challenge for the number 9 position with the national team, especially in front of his family and friends back in his hometown of St. Louis.
Staying in England, moving up a level to the Premier League, Newcastle will host Manchester City. Tim Howard making news ahead of this one. The headlines here are a bit clickbaity. If you actually see the context of what he said, it's nothing that others haven't said as well. Basically, he was talking about how in this effort to be progressive, the U.S. has kind of shed some of its toughness from previous generations. And he said sort of tongue-in-cheek that Pep Guardiola has ruined the game because now everybody wants to play this neat possession soccer, play out of the back. They view that as the right way to play. And Tim is hoping that Mauricio Pochettino is willing to be pragmatic if it'll help him get results.
Gee, that sounds familiar. Okay, so again, to your point, he's not saying anything necessarily that is wrong. However, I will say, and look, I am the first one to scream and yell and grumpy old man and talk about, the benefits of pragmatism and the risks of being romantic and people dying on hills that they shouldn't and people wanting to do something that they don't have the capability to be able to do. However, when I think about it, I don't know, in terms of music, you could say you could make the same accusation that Tim Howard is making of Pep Guardiola to, I don't know, Eddie Van Halen, in that he did things that made so many other guitarists believe that was the way to do things and that was how to play the guitar when they didn't have the capabilities and they were just mimicking, and nobody could ultimately get to that level. Now, it's a little different because you're talking about a soccer team, and in this case, Pep Guardiola's multiple teams, where he has so much more talent. And so the ability to do that rests in the talent that he has. And we'll never know, I guess, how good Pep Guardiola actually is unless you were to put him on an even playing field with all of the rest of the teams, or even a team that was horrible, and see how romantic he is in that moment. When his job is on the line to get results, is he really that romantic figure that says, I would rather lose playing this way that I feel is the way to play the game than do what is necessary in that moment to win, knowing that I'm sending the lambs to slaughter here by sending them out and having to play a way that they ultimately can't. So I don't think that this is blasphemy, or I don't think that this is a ridiculous take from our friend Tim Howard over there. But I also don't think that it is a criticism that means that Pep Guardiola shouldn't have done what he did, or shouldn't keep doing what he has done, because obviously he believes that this is the way that the game should be played when you have the players to play it like that.
I have a Newcastle Man City take as it relates to financial fair play, but I'm going to save that for Monday's pod when we recap this game, because I don't want us to lose this thread. Tim Howard accused Pep of ruining soccer, and somebody accused you of hurting the sport as well.
Who's that?
World Soccer Talk.
Oh, our friends over at World Soccer Talk. Okay, yeah.
Somebody by the name of Kyle Fansler wrote a column titled "Has Alexi Lalas helped or hurt soccer in the USA?" I don't know if you've had a chance to read it.
Yeah, it was nice of them to send it to me. World Soccer Talk. It was in my inbox. So I clicked on the thing. I said, "Hey, there it is. There's my name. At least I spelled my name right." The premise of the article is that me, and by extension, maybe some others out there in the over-the-top, flamboyant, loud, controversial way that we have performed on television is turning people off and is ultimately hurting American soccer. I reject this premise. I recognize fully and raise my hand that there are people who like me and people don't like me. It just comes with the territory, and that's fine. I'm not going to change how I go about performing, and I also don't look at saying I am a performer as a pejorative. So that's it's certainly their prerogative to write things. And look, what they are accusing me of is actually what they are doing themselves, in that we're talking about it right now. We've clicked on the link, and so well played, my friends over there at World Soccer Talk.
Can I make a confession?
Sure, go ahead.
Whenever there is an article written about you, which happens fairly often, all I do is skim it to see if my name is mentioned at all. And it wasn't. I mean, Kyle Fansler, would it have killed you to throw in a line? Alexi, you can see on TV, on Twitter, and in the podcast he hosts with David Mosse.
Well, or, a line of like, while Alexi is the Antichrist, at the very least, if you listen long enough, you can have David Mosse, who is not a complete solve to the situation, but at least gives you a perspective of, intelligence and be able to articulate, these types of things. So he is the real star, as we all know, and as certainly I know.
To be fair, I do have a good relationship with Chris Harris, who runs that site, and Kartik Krishnaiyer. And when this podcast debuted in 2018, they wrote a review of it. And in that article, they trashed you, but they did throw in a line. Statman Mosse provided good analysis as always. So.
Buddy, you are you are authentic and genuine, and I love you. So bring it on. It's okay. Like I said, they spelled my name right, so I'm cool with it, and it comes with the territory. So go, knock yourself out, fill your boots, all that kind of stuff. What else?
Let's keep it going. Massive game in Germany this weekend. Bayern Munich will host Bayer Leverkusen. That is 1 versus 2. Bayern, even by their standards, have been on just a stupid run. 21 goals in the last 3 games. A 6-1, a 9-2, and a 5-0. The opposition, though, Holstein Kiel, Dinamo Zagreb, and Werder Bremen. So this is a step up in class against Leverkusen. We're going to start to find out if this was just a one-year thing and normal business has resumed in Germany, or if Leverkusen can make it a 2-season deal like Klopp and Dortmund did many years back.
But while it might be an anomaly type of thing, the Leverkusen thing, it's not as crazy and abnormal as a Leicester City type of situation, right?
No.
Okay. Because I do think that it's impossible for them to continue on for what happened. It was a magical type of year, but they are, they're just not some little team when it comes to who they are, and so they'll be in it. But if you're Bayern Munich, you want to say, okay, that was nice. You had your little moment but now we're going to get back to the order that has been established over the last 10 years in terms of them winning. And Harry Kane's on fire, and but he still hasn't won the Bundesliga now. So I think he's gunning for that.
Harry Kane is on fire. Michael Olise, who scored against the U.S. at the Olympics, has proven to be a great signing, off to a good start there. To your point, though, about Leverkusen, they've won 3 of 4 Bundesliga games, and they hammered Feyenoord 4-0 away in the Champions League. So they're off to a fine start as well. Florian Wirtz keeps getting better and better. There's a lot of talk of Bayern wanting to sign him to pair him and Musiala together at club level, too. They already combine very well together with the national team. It's a neat coaching matchup. Vincent Kompany against Xabi Alonso, 2 great former players. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Okay. What else? Anything else happening over there in Deutschland?
Dortmund will host Eric Wijnaldum's former club Bochum. Gio Reyna, we know, has been out with a groin injury. We did get an update. Nuri Sahin, the Dortmund manager, said that Gio is progressing faster than expected. Originally, they thought he was going to be out until after the October international break, but now he might be back before that, which raises the tantalizing question: if Gio gets on the field before that October window, would Pochettino include him in the squad, even though he's barely played this season?
I mean, or would Dortmund let him go? I mean, that would be the other thing. That's what I'm worried about. I don't care about Dortmund. I care about the U.S. men's national team. And if Gio is going to be a part of it, the more times he is involved, the better off it is for him and for Pochettino, especially now that this is that new era. And if I were any player, including Gio, and I know he's coming back from injury, I would want to get in front of Pochettino as soon as I possibly could, at the first possible chance that I got, which is going to be this. My worry is that if they start to, at Dortmund, if he starts to get on the field and kind of come back, I think it's with the recognition that he's just coming back, and then they're going to say, hey, you need to slow it down because you're going to go and you're going to play these 2 games and you're going to travel and do all these different things. But I hope that he is with Pochettino in this first camp that Pochettino is running. So we'll see. It's good news that he's ahead of schedule, and I think if he is playing in these next couple of games before the window, even if it's in a substitute capacity, I'm assuming that's what it's going to be, get your ass on that plane and get over here for this window.
Big one in Spain. Atletico Madrid will host Real Madrid. Real Madrid suffered only 2 defeats in all competitions last season. They were both away to Atletico, one in the league and one in the Copa del Rey. The big news ahead of this one: Kylian Mbappe picked up a muscle injury in Real Madrid's midweek win over Alaves. Sounds like he's going to be out 3 weeks, so he's going to miss this showdown.
Yeah, that's too bad. I mean, anytime that a huge star player goes down, it sucks because you want to see them, especially when that game, that midweek game that they had against Alaves. I mean, the goal that he scored, and for those that didn't see it, he gets the ball, does one of those exaggerated back heels, but not like in an unnecessary way. Exaggerated back heels, and then a give and go, and gets it back, and the shifting of his weight from one side to the other, you could see not just the defenders go, but the entire stadium go. And then as he comes back to the right, now the goal opens up, and then he comes back to the left with the shot. It was just a wonderful look at somebody who, in that moment, has such command, not just of the ball, but of his body and an awareness of the moments to go one side and then the other side, let the ball do a little bit of the work, and in doing so, just completely shut down the defenders, and then the wherewithal, obviously, to put it in the back of the net. So that sucks that he got hurt and he'll be out for a few weeks, but hopefully it's just like I said, a few week type of situation, because he's worth the money.
From a Brazilian perspective, I don't think Endrick would start this game. I think Ancelotti is going to insert an extra midfielder, either Modric or Camavinga, if he's fit enough to start, and just play essentially last season's line, but with Vinicius and Rodrigo as a front 2 and Bellingham in the hole there. But in subsequent games that Mbappe misses, I think Endrick could get a look, could start a couple of those. So I'm excited to see that. Atletico, by the way, who now have this terrific front 2 themselves of Julian Alvarez and Antoine Griezmann, they're very annoyed about the scheduling because they play tomorrow against Celta Vigo. Real Madrid played Tuesday against Alaves, so Real Madrid get 2 extra days rest ahead of this one.
Yeah, quick, Ryan. You're going to be okay.
All right, we transition here to the States. We should note we're taping this on Wednesday afternoon. We have 3 trophies on the line tonight. By the time you hear this podcast, all these matches will have already been played. LAFC will host SKC in the U.S. Open Cup final. You are attending that match, correct?
I am heading after we're done here over to watch that game. Mosse, I got a question for you because I was out last night having a few drinks with some soccer people that are in town for this game, and we were at an establishment, and we actually ran into some Sporting KC fans. Number one, I think this is a huge and very, very important game for Peter Vermes. And while he has certainly had a long leash, and rightfully so, and with what he has done, and he is a legend no matter what, it has not gone well the last couple of years, and again this year, and this is all they are really playing for. And if at the end of the year that you don't make the playoffs, you can at least show that you have a trophy, that certainly can help in the assessment. But I think this is a huge, huge game. LAFC, we know, while they get to finals, they often lose finals. But again, this is another opportunity at home for them, and for Steve Cherundolo. But I met a woman in the bar last night who is a Sporting KC fan in for the game. But she told me she was born in St. Louis, but became a Sporting KC fan when she moved. So, which leads me to this question, because I was talking to producer Sean earlier. If you are born in a city that does not have a sports team, this applies to him from an NFL perspective because he has the Tennessee team was not there, the football team was not there, and so he became evidently a Seattle. What's the Seattle football team up there?
Seahawks.
The Seahawks fan. If you are born in a city that does not have a major league team, and so you become a fan of another team while growing up, and then your city does get a team, do you think that you are not required, but it is expected of you to then transfer your allegiance to that city?
No, I think you can keep your original allegiance. Yeah.
I don't understand why the city or the state affiliation and connection doesn't supersede whatever you've done before. I mean, I get why as a kid you've been that fan, but the entire reason why you were a fan of that team was because you didn't have one in your city or in your state or in your region. And so you had to go elsewhere. And so now you don't have to go elsewhere. It seems strange.
Interesting.
I don't know.
But back to this game, we know the issues that LAFC have had in finals. They lost MLS Cup, Leagues Cup, CCL. We even had Soccer Thoughts recently suggest they should hire a finals coach. God help Steve Cherundolo if he loses this one. This is one that LAFC should win.
Yeah, evidently it's sold out, so it's going to be a rocking environment there, at least for people that are, of the world and can compare and contrast with what goes on around the world, like we talked about earlier, and appreciate that while it is still the same game, it can be a very different environment, but just as enjoyable. I think tonight's going to be fun. But like you said, Steve Cherundolo and Peter Vermes, I think they both kind of need it. I think Peter Vermes needs it much more.
To go back to Sean's Seahawks allegiance, when they lost that Super Bowl to the Patriots where Russell Wilson threw the interception at the goal line, that has to be like the most traumatic sports experience of Sean's life. I mean, what a brutal way to lose a Super Bowl.
Well, if he had become, like I'm suggesting, what are the Titans of Tennessee? Is that what they are or whatever? If he had just become a Tennessee Titans kind of guy, he wouldn't have had to go through that heartache. So, all right. How about MLS? We're down to the nitty gritty.
So I said 3 trophies on the line tonight. I should mention the other 2.
That's true.
Columbus will host Club America in the Campeones Cup. Columbus looking to win another trophy here. Obviously, they won MLS Cup last year. They just won Leagues Cup. Matt Doyle has said they are the best team in the region right now. This would be another chance to underline that. So
he's saying that Columbus is
the best club team in all of CONCACAF. He puts them ahead of any Mexican side.
Okay. That's interesting. I don't know how important this game is, but it'll be fun to see and to watch. But I think all eyes at this point will be on Open Cup. All right, so this gets into Matt Doyle then would probably put Columbus in terms of the contenders and your safe money at the top, right?
Remember, they did get drilled by Pachuca in the CONCACAF Champions Cup final, but the way Matt Doyle types have explained that away is, remember the virus that was running through the team? They were all suffering from diarrhea, so that one doesn't count, apparently.
Oh, okay. So the results don't count if anybody gets sick.
And then the third trophy, very quickly, Vancouver hosts Toronto in the Canadian Championship. Sean Sullivan did not include that in the rundown. He hates Canada.
Right, that's true. We know that.
We should mention it.
Exactly. All right. Well, you can also watch all of those games. They're all going on tonight. All right. So we are getting down to the nitty gritty. As we said, plenty of teams that have already qualified in both conferences. Unfortunately for some teams, they are already out, including Kansas City, as we just talked about. So they have been eliminated. San Jose has been eliminated. St. Louis is going to be eliminated at some point. Probably Austin. Dallas is right below the line right now, but I don't think they're going to go in. All right. So when it comes to contenders, I agree with Matt Doyle that Columbus is up there. I'm still going to put Miami above them in terms of I guess it would be safe money. And when I say safe money relative to the MLS playoffs, keep in mind that we have a long, tried and tested history where teams that are kicking ass in the regular season don't necessarily parlay that into MLS Cup. And so these are your safe money in terms of what they've done. But it's all relative to what they've done in the regular season, and there's almost a whole new lease on life that happens. And it is actually very rare for a team that wins Supporters Shield to go on and parlay that also into an MLS Cup. And we talk about that every single year. But certainly the cream of the crop, Columbus, Miami. I would put Miami above Columbus, and then I'm going to put the LA Galaxy there. So that would be the first tier. When it comes to second tier, Cincinnati, and I'm sure the Ohio folks over there in Cincinnati are going to be angry at me not putting them first tier, especially since right now, just on the actual standings, they are at number 2 and Columbus number 1. But I'm still going to put them down. Hey, you know what? It's actually probably a good thing for you, Cincinnati. You don't want too much pressure, and you can come up. Dark horse. So Cincinnati, I would put probably Salt Lake. I have a hard time putting Colorado in there, and maybe I'm just colored by the years of neglect and ineffective type of play that they have. But listen, they're sitting in third place over there in the Western Conference. So I can be convinced, and I also would put LAFC right now that we just talked about. Dark horse types of things, and again, we get this all the time when it comes to MLS playoffs. I think you're talking about like a Houston and even the Red Bulls. And keep in mind that New York Red Bulls have never won an MLS Cup. They've been to MLS Cups before, but they've never won an MLS Cup. So who knows? You could make some good money in terms of the New York Red Bulls winning MLS Cup. Anything on MLS before we go, Mosse?
You mentioned the Red Bulls. They're involved in my favorite game of this upcoming weekend. They will face NYCFC. I attended this fixture last season. The Red Bulls can clinch a playoff berth for the 15th straight campaign.
Yeah, I mean, they make the playoffs. They just don't win MLS Cup. But, at some point, I remember back in the 2008 MLS Cup where they ended up losing to Columbus, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
I remember that because I had just started with ESPN and I was working the desk. And before the game, I promised that if the Red Bulls lost, that I would chug a full Red Bull on air. And I was working with the great Julie Foudy. And the Red Bulls lost, and so it came time to do this. And rather than pull out the normal size Red Bull, she pulled out a giant, extra large type of Red Bull. And I shotgunned it, and the rest is history.
You were good then. The World Soccer Talk guy said he liked
true.
you at ESPN. It's only since you got to Fox that he started ruining the sport.
Well, it was looked at as fun and joyous, and anything fun and joyous we know that those folks over there don't like. So they probably would not have liked it back then either. All right. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. Keep in mind that our handle out there on the social media platforms, if you are sending them in, and use that hashtag AskAlexi, is SOTU with Alexi, SOTU with Alexi. Or you can send in a question, comment, or concern on our State of the Union podcast voicemail, which is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. And by the way, if you're over there on the old Apple machine, drop us a review, okay? Because they all count. And evidently, the more good reviews you get, then obviously the higher your stars and your rating is and stuff like that. And look, I fully recognize that people come on there and they don't like it, or they have an axe to grind or whatever, and they don't give us a good rating and stuff like that. So if you do, if you find anything redeeming in this podcast, even if it's only just David Mosse, go over there and give us a good review. That would be really nice on the Apple machine or any other machines that have their reviews there. All right, Mosse, what do the folks want to know today?
We have first up a voicemail. Let's take a listen.
Hi, this is Bjorn Webb calling from the great city of Buffalo, New York. Love the show, guys. The U.S. men's national team has it's really quickly become my favorite sports team. And my question for you is, how do I explain the complexity of this sports team to an American that is not a soccer fan? As I said, I live in Buffalo, New York, and my next question is, what would it take to get an MLS franchise to come here, besides just oodles and oodles of money? And finally, how dare Stu Holden come on this show and have the audacity to come on and think that he could even think of putting his name first? And I quote, he said, the Stu and Mosse show. It's ridiculous. As a host, yes, you are the host and you host something, and that something is the great David Mosse. Love the show, guys. Thanks for doing it.
Oh, I appreciate it. I think he said his name was Bjorn, I guess, from Buffalo. That's what we're going to call him. I'm sorry if we messed it up there, but thank you first off for that wonderful message and all the kind words. I mean, look, I think Stu recognized that he had big shoes to fill, and I think he wanted to make a statement, wanted to do something that was going to resonate, maybe even shock. I think to a certain extent he did that, but like I said last week, I think he did a good job. I hope that, and I might have been mistaken, I'm not sure he rebranded the entire show, and if he did, it certainly didn't stick. So I'm back here, and they can pry it from my cold, dead, redheaded hands, and they will. All the young'uns are coming, whether it's Stu or anybody else. But I'm going to hang out here as long as they'll have me, and as long as my good friend David Mosse will have me. But to your point, yes, the respect and the reverence, I think, whether I'm in this seat or not, has to be shown by any type of guest that comes on either live or on Zoom or any other capacity on this show. Understand what you are getting into when you come on the State of the Union, and whether it's me or, more importantly, whether it's David Mosse, make sure that you pay homage, if you will. To your other question, when it comes to Buffalo, and I think you hit it on the head. I mean, look, Buffalo, I don't have to tell you, is not a major market. It's not a need to have. It'd be maybe a nice to have. And unless somebody comes along with a whole lot of money, and I'm sure, Bjorn, you know a whole lot more about the scene up there when it comes to soccer, but if somebody came along and said, yeah, we want to make this something special, we want to make this and I don't know what the comp is relative to population, but we want to make this a Cincinnati type of thing. We want to build a stadium, and we want to bring that MLS environment and experience to Buffalo. If somebody had a lot of money, absolutely they would look at it. But keep in mind what's happened over the years with someone like Sacramento or something like that. Sometimes they'll leverage that, and for other maybe more attractive types of markets. And again, it's with all due respect to Buffalo, it's just the reality of the situation when you're looking at other markets. But I have no doubt, Bjorn, that if somebody like that came along, that all of these markets, whether they in the past have been soccer markets or whether they are just bubbling under the surface as potential markets, could do great things, including Buffalo. How do you describe the U.S. men's national team to a non-soccer fan? I think it's really simple. You talk about how, take a sport that they love and say, if you had to make your team, hockey or whatever it is, out of all players that have American passports, who would be on your team? And think of all the challenges given our incredible diversity when it comes to language, when it comes to culture, when it comes to geography, all that different stuff. Think of all the challenges of putting 11 people on a field to represent a country of 360 million people with, like I said, just, I think arguably, the greatest and certainly the widest range of diversity when it comes to the way that we think, the way that we act, and who we are. It's not easy. And yet in that moment when they are all standing up there and that song plays and you put your hand over your heart and you're singing the national anthem and you're representing this incredible country, it's 11 players, often with incredibly different and diverse types of pathways to get there. And I love that about what the national team is. The other thing is that you can tell them is, for maybe the first time in your sporting existence, this is a situation where you are going to be be rooting for a team that isn't necessarily the best, and oftentimes isn't the best relative to the rest of the world. So it gives you something to work for, and it's not all about ultimately being the best in the world. Yes, that's the ultimate goal, but how you get there is going to be as important as finally get there. I think that's how you sell it to people going forward, is that even with one foot behind our back because of the realities of our country and culture relative to soccer, we still have the desire to be the best. And who knows when that's going to happen? Who knows how it's going to happen? And we got a lot of twists and turns in history, and there will be many more going forward. But it's a hell of a ride. And so come on in because it's fun too. That's how. All right. What else you got, Mosse?
We have one more question for you. We're actually going to save it for the one for the road.
Cool. All right. Let's take a quick break then. And when we come back, like you said, I will give you my one for the road. Oh, there's the van, Mosse. And the van means one thing. That means we're at the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. So I was over there on the old X machine this morning, and somebody was asking me a question about their child, and they were asking for some advice as to what to do in terms of, giving them the proper upbringing relative to soccer. And this is an evergreen type of question. I get asked this all the time. Whether it's privately or publicly, people will come up to me and say, I have this 6-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever. And it can be a real type of dilemma, because I think certainly as parents, you want to give your children the best that you possibly can. And when it comes to something like soccer, inevitably you will be faced with, well, am I doing the right thing? All right. So first off, when you're asking that question, I think you also have to turn it around and ask yourself, what are your goals? Not putting the ball in the back of the net, but what are your goals for the time that your child is going to spend in the game? And it might be everything from, look, my kid needs to use this in order to potentially get a scholarship, because that's how he or she is ultimately going to get to college or to get to a better college. And at least that's clear. We can argue about whether that's prudent or not, but at least that's clear. Or it can be something as simple as, I want my kid to have fun, but I want them also to get better and to see how practice will help them get better and succeed, because those are the lessons and the tools and the experiences that you can use going forward in life when I know they're not necessarily going to be a professional soccer player. And there's everything in between. This was a question about personal trainers and, the advent of personal trainers when it comes to soccer. It's not necessarily new, but it's certainly relatively new. But it's not new in terms of sports, or I guess any activity out there, in that going and finding somebody that is going to give you one-on-one what amounts to tutoring. That is an age-old practice in order to get better. Yes, there is a cost involved. And yes, there is a result and usually an improvement when it comes to what you are doing. In this case, he was talking about different programs that are out there in order to improve your touch and improve your technique and all of these things. And I'm not saying that it is not something that you should do. As a matter of fact, when it comes to personal training and personal trainers, as I said, this applies to a lot of activities in life. They certainly can help. But the benefit and the value is really simply relative to, the formal and the organized, the concentration of that training, the repetition that training gives you, and maybe the most important thing, the motivation that it gives you, because you have to get up and you have to go to wherever that training is. And again, this applies to people that go to a gym. It's a lot easier if you are actually going to gym or going to a class to get that workout done than if you're just relying on yourself. However, when it comes to the training that is often offered in personal training, most of it, relative to soccer training, most of these exercises that you are going to be put through can be replicated at home, can be replicated in a park, can be replicated in your front lawn, can be replicated on the street, and more importantly, can be done with little or no cost out there. And I'm talking about, everything from kicking the ball against the wall 100 times, 1,000 times, whatever it ends up being, out of the air, inside of the foot, outside of the foot, just literally kicking the ball against the wall, using smaller balls, tennis balls, mini balls, all of those things to get more of your touch. And really what it comes down to is the whole Miyagi versus Cobra Kai type of thing. And again, this isn't me poo-pooing on personal trainers or, anybody that's listened to this show over the years knows that I'm actually a champion of all of the business when it comes to soccer out there. But recognize, certainly at a young age, the more you spend with the ball, the better off you are going to be. And certainly there can be moments where it is formal and there are exercises that you're doing, but a lot of time it's just having the ball at your feet and dribbling around the house and dribbling around your yard and having that touch and getting repetition of all of those different touches. That's important. And it's also sometimes it's not in that formal setting that you get the most work done, especially when you're younger. Because we all know, whether it's in school or whether it's in sports, sometimes the over-organization of the sport can be detrimental to the development of the individual player out there. I mean, I vividly remember, and I lived in a very, very different time, but I vividly remember sitting out there on my front sidewalk and juggling the ball. I vividly remember with me and my friend trying to get whatever the record was of the week for how many times we could hit the ball off of our head or how many juggles that we could do, or going out and finding a wall and smashing the ball time after time after again. So it's not just the actual hitting of the ball, it's the return of the ball and understanding the spin and understanding the geometry and all of the different mathematics and formulas and equations that go into a sport that involves a round ball. So don't worry. Whether you have a personal trainer or not, you can still get what you need in order to develop as a young player.
One last thing before we go.
Sure.
For those of you watching us today, I really like this double box that we threw up every now and then. That's a Gabe suggestion, our new director, putting his stamp on the show already.
Hey, listen, you just do a little bit here or a little bit there. We like to think that we're growing, okay? Regardless of what World Soccer Talk might think. We like to think that we're growing and that we are getting better and that we take people's advice. That's why I tell people to review and to, leave reviews and do all this stuff and let us know, because this is a work in progress, and we appreciate that everybody is hanging out with us and has hung out with us so many years. We hopefully have many, many more. And, we'll do some different things. Some of them may work, Mosse. Some of them won't. Anything planned for you this weekend?
No, nothing special. We'll just be home watching sports and other stuff.
Do your Wolverines play this weekend?
Yes, we host Minnesota.
Easy, right?
Should be. We'll see if our quarterback can throw for more than 32 yards.
All right. As I said, thank you for reviewing and downloading and subscribing. Speaking of subscribing, smash that button over there. Smash that button. Leave some reviews, too. Smash that button over there on YouTube. Just smash it. Smash it. 2 hands. Up, down, double fisted, all that kind of stuff. Punch it out over there on Spotify. All of those different buttons. We appreciate everybody that is doing that. Have a wonderful weekend watching all of your soccer or any other sports that you're watching out there. We'll talk to you again next week. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.